Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we are going to go over the top 20 solo games from 2022. And this is coming from the Rolling Solo board game community, and that's a group that exists on Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook, well, there are other avenues that you can join us. We have Discord as well. There's also, of course, YouTube channel where things happen, but primarily this vote for this top 20 list, which happens every year around the end of the year, is to find out what the community thinks is the top 20 games. I also have 5 additional entries that come in just after the top 20. So we have basically 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And those games are typically garnering steam, but usually have probably come out towards the tail end of the year and maybe haven't garnered enough votes to really get in there. But it's worth mentioning a handful because some of them will probably pick up steam quite quickly if the list had been created maybe a month or two down the line. But long story short, 20 is what we're going for. We have 5 honorable mentions, so we'll start with the 5 honorable mentions. It's also worth mentioning that normally when I do these lists, I have gameplay on the screen at the same time in order to show you kind of like how it flows and operates. You get a visual. This time around, we're going to do things a little differently. I'm going to pop the game up on Board Game Geek, and I'm going to send you there in order to take a look through things. Also, you can easily go to my YouTube, which you can see up there in the top right-hand corner, if you want to search for the games that I'm talking about to see if I have content on it. And of course, YouTube in general will have a wealth of content across these games. So hopefully this list highlights things for you. And when we get into this list next year, I will be sure to kind of bring back the coolness factor of having, gameplay footage during this video, which I really, really like doing. It's just I had a huge computer rebuild occur. And so because of that, I am all over the place this Christmas and spent a lot of time moving things from one computer to another in order to get things situated for this year. So kind of put a kink into how I do this. But we're going to work with it. We're going to run with it. And I hope this list still is useful for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the very first game on the list. And I've gone ahead and just got it pasted in here, and it is going to be Flamecraft. So this is the one coming in the 25th position. So this comes from Cardboard Alchemy. And actually, when I was at PAX in Philadelphia, I got a chance to play this. I also actually had the game myself. I already owned it here, but I didn't actually get a chance to play it until I was at PAX, which is kind of funny. But I enjoyed it. It was very light, so don't expect to be overwhelmed by rules. You could literally sit this thing down, take a look over the rule book in about 15 minutes, and you can just start playing, and the game will just kind of click as you play. There's not a lot there in terms of like deep complexity on the rule side of things, so that's good. You can see that Board Game Geek rates it as a 2.19 out of 5, which is certainly on the light-hand side of things, but it does have a really, really cute vibe to it. So just to zoom in here and give you a better look at some of the pictures here, the artwork is really cool, and the gameplay is fun as well. If we can actually get to some here that actually have the board layout, I'll give you a shot maybe the back of the box here. You can see the board's kind of laid out, left to right. It's very, very long across the table, and you basically are placing your dragons in these different shops, and they're activating different abilities and triggering different things, combinations, resources in order to accumulate points, which are kept on a track in the center. And so for solo play, that's one thing that I got to say right off the hop. I haven't played this one solo. I played multiplayer. So again, remember, this list isn't my list. This is the community's list. So the community's put Flamecraft at number 25 for solo gaming. Let's move on to number 24. And that position belongs to Bullet Star. This is the next honorable mention, coming in the 24th position. As you can see from Board Game Geek, it is rated very well, and actually Bullet Heart, which was the one that released prior to this, actually ranked a little bit lower. I believe it was 7.9, if memory serves. 7.7, so actually quite a bit lower. But this was a step up for sure with the most recent edition. And in terms of solo play, it is worth playing solo. Now, sometimes I always go into here just to take a quick glance at what players recommend, but it can be a little bit jarring. And the results sometimes are not exactly accurate. And there's also sometimes not a lot of results in the first place. But I can tell you that from experience, Bullet is a very, very cool system. And it is definitely a game where, very similar to the one I just mentioned with Flamecraft or maybe something like Marvel United, it's very light. So you're able to get through the rulebook quickly and enjoy it. And that's nice because some of these solo campaign games can be quite brutal on the rule side of the equation and even just getting into the flow of the game. And I would definitely say that Bullet is a good option for you. You got the description of the game right here. And of course, if you want to find out more about this, you can certainly dig a little bit further. But also, something I'll mention about it that I really like is the artwork. Unfortunately, Board Game Geek doesn't have too much on the artwork side of things, but I like the anime style of the game. And I also just like the components inside of the game, too. They are very visually appealing, and it is very, very small in its footprint on the table, especially if you're playing solo. So, a good mention by the solo community. The next honorable mention on the list sits in the 23rd position, and this is Lands of Galzir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hopefully I am, but you'll also notice something right off the bat here. Not only is it ranked really, really high, honestly, anything 8 on Board Game Geek and above is going to be a solid bet to be a great game. Now, in terms of weight here, really actually quite shocking that this is as low a complexity as it is, but that's not a bad thing. Again, having these kind of games in your collection can be a dream come true, because sometimes you just don't know what games to pull off the shelf from a solo perspective, and having a game that actually doesn't require a lot of rules reading is really nice, and in terms of just understanding the flow of the game. This is an adventure game, as it mentions here, so you got a wide open world, persistent world, actions and consequences. Like, this is going to be a narrative walkthrough exploration game with all kinds of different branching paths for you to explore. So in terms of its visuals, it's also extremely good looking on the table. It looks great. The components are also awesome. I have it myself. This is one you should certainly check out. I'd like to get this to the channel in the near future as well. It'll be a lot of fun. This would be one I should be able to easily squeak in. It most likely will happen in 2023. But this is certainly one to keep your eyes on, and a great choice by the community. All right, in the 22nd position, we have another honorable mention. It's Dead Reckoning, and I actually was quite surprised because I thought this would be further up on the list, maybe like the 18th position or 17th position, inside the top 20 at least, but this one ended up in 22nd position. The weight of this one at 3.3, that might be part of the reason why it's a little bit more on the heavier side of the equation. Dead Reckoning is one that brings card crafting. It's got the card crafting and 4X thing going on. I'll show you some pictures of it. It's a beautiful looking game on the table, and it has really cool, interesting things happening inside of it. There's also a lot of expansions for it, and there's more expansions that have come out. And what I really like about it is just the building up of your crew and also the customization of your ship. There's just a number of really cool things kind of jammed together that work really well. And as a solo game, I think it actually shines quite a bit because it does kind of lend itself more towards the heavier side of the equation. So less players seems to be a more positive outcome in terms of people liking the game. I personally think that this definitely deserves to be on this list, and probably even in a higher position. I would definitely recommend, if you like a more grittier pirate experience, you check it out. I'm really hoping in the future for more experiences around pirates that are on the grittier side of the equation, because pirates have so much to offer in terms of their theme, and I don't think it's something that is overdone. I think in most cases when we see pirates, there's typically animated, it's cartoonish, it's more comedic than it is adult. And I think if you took the adult side of pirating and really ran with it, you could actually create quite a crazy campaign game or adventure game out of it. And I think this was a good attempt at that, again, with a very different mix, not being an adventure game. But long story short, I'm a fan of it. I like it. It's staying in my collection. I think it's unique, and it is the only pirate game that's actually lasted in my collection. The final honorable mention is in the 21st spot, and it is one I just literally covered on the channel. It is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the adventure board game. This is literally taking the video game, bringing it to the tabletop, and I can tell you right now, this is a justified average score. I would 100% agree. This is a solid 8. I was not 100% sure whether this would actually land as well as it did, but when I played the prototype of it, I was pleasantly surprised to the point where I was really anticipating it landing. I think a lot of people are going to be starting to give this thing more attention than they originally did. I think a lot of people looked at this as, well, here comes another video game adaptation that's probably just going to be, a 7 or a 6, just because it's an IP game and that's about it. They're just trying to make money off the IP. They really did do a great job implementing the level up system, the managing of your stamina, your energy, your health, your magicka, like all that kind of stuff. The leveling up system is fantastic. It's not onerous or ridiculous. You can really start seeing the ripple effects of getting more powerful abilities as you go along. or I should say skills. I really like this one. Like, it's staying in my collection. I am immediately after I finished covering it on the channel, I'm going to be taking both expansion box in the near future here, jamming them into the core box. I'm already trying to track down a couple other things for the game that I don't currently have. And I actually am kind of regretting that I didn't get. I really think this is a gem, and I think it's going to continue to bump up the charts as time goes on. It has tons of cards, lots of narrative in there, and lots of branching paths, which is exactly what you want out of an adventure game. So if you're into Skyrim or fantasy in general, or you've never played Skyrim, which I don't know if that's even humanly possible at this point, based on how many different consoles this thing is across, it's now on the tabletop. So if you didn't try it as a console experience, you absolutely should be trying it as a tabletop experience. And if you enjoyed Skyrim even a little bit in the past, you should check this one out. At this point, we now get into the top 20 list. Again, this list made by the Rolling Solo Board Game community on Facebook, so join us there if you haven't already. Patreon exists. We also have a Discord. There's multiple different ways to get involved with the community, but here we go with the number 20th position. It's Spires and Hildegard. This is actually one that I covered on the channel, and this is another light one, surprisingly. We have a lot of light entries on this list this year. People are probably gravitating towards that because of just time. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, you can get these games to table quicker and faster. And if you want to find out more about this one, I've got it on the channel. It comes with beautiful artwork. It is a very small footprint, and you can literally, this is one of those ones you can just take in your backpack, suitcase, on the airplane, wherever you're going in the car. You can move around with this one and you can play it. And I think that's one of the biggest things with this is it's just essentially the original entry that wasn't Hildegard, just Spire's End, was just essentially a deck of cards. And you had some components to keep track of things and dice, of course. But what Hildegard did was basically build off of that, add a little bit more meat to the bone. And then, of course, there's the opportunity for you to have your adventure go south real fast. You can potentially find your way through multiple chapters and then have it go south. I just had a blast going through all of this, and it was really cool because you never really knew what was coming up, and the cards were kind of telling a story, but the way in which they tell the story kind of changes every so often in terms of the mechanics of how the cards are used during gameplay, which I really liked. It was kind of like I wasn't always expecting the same kind of interaction every single time. And the way in which they use the dice in order to, complete bullseye sets was just really cool. So this is one, if you're looking for something that does not cost a lot, it's available, I believe. You can get it through a campaign when it exists, but you can also get it straight from the publisher as well. I highly recommend this one. It was a lot of fun. Next one on the list, in the 19th position, is Star Wars The Clone Wars. This comes from Z-Man Games, and there has been other iterations of this before because this is a re-implementation from Pandemic, as it mentions right here on Board Game Geek. And again, a solid rating of 7.8. For me personally, the Pandemic series is not as exciting to me. I think it's maybe because I burnt out on it really bad early on. But in terms of what it does, I can totally understand, and the fact that we've got the IP of Star Wars here, being that I'm a massive Star Wars fan, I get it. I understand why the community voted this thing in to the top 20 list 100%. Pandemic is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's been around for a long time, and re-implementations of it and new themes are always going to just pull another whole group of people back into the fray to play. This one also looks really, like, I remember doing an unboxing for this one on the channel, and I had a lot of fun going through the components. They are very nice. It presents well, and actually the fact that it's around the Clone Wars was a wise choice, I think. I think that was a great time period for this game to exist inside the Pandemic system. I think it's a good match, long story short. And it is very, very nice. And as a Star Wars fan, even just looking at it now, it makes me kind of want to go downstairs and grab it. But still, I do want to say that I think this is kind of like one of those ones for me where I might have gone, you know what, I think Dead Reckoning would have swapped places with this one in terms of where it sits. I think this deserves to be mentioned, but I don't think it's better than Dead Reckoning. And this is where the list gets interesting, right? Like, again, everyone's opinions are different and stuff like this, and this is kind of a community voting in this situation, but this is a solid choice still. This is a solid choice. So kudos to Z-Man Games for putting that together. Well done. And hopefully, maybe, there'll be more cool themed Pandemic games coming out in the future. I really don't think that's going to stop because the World of Warcraft one came out, I believe, just prior to this one. So there'll probably be other themes hitting the store shelves very soon. The 18th position on the list belongs to Stars of Ikarios. This comes from OOMM, and I knew this one was going to be on the list somewhere. I just didn't know where. And this is a huge, epic narrative adventure in space. You're going to be managing your ship. You're going to be customizing a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to be doing all kinds of major battles. You're going to be going through a series of missions. It's a campaign-style game. This is probably the biggest game. It has to be the biggest game to date on this list so far, as most of the ones prior to this so far have been rather light or medium in terms of their content. This one's going to put you down a rabbit hole. You're going to have a lot here to sink your teeth into. It is the first iteration of the game. There has been some bumps along the way. There's been an FAQ, I believe, that's come out to address some things. There's also been talk about a second edition coming out, which is going to smooth over some of the rough edges of what came out the first time through. But regardless of any rough edges from some of these campaign games that come from Kickstarter or GameFound, the overall average breakdown being 8.4 is extremely impressive. And also, it is really cool looking. Like, the artwork's awesome. The miniatures look extremely cool. On the table, it absolutely has table presence. If you're looking for kind of a space epic, this could absolutely suck you in and keep you busy for quite some time. So I highly recommend this one. And actually, even on Board Game Geek, this game is rated best to play with one player. And that is something that I do, like I said before earlier on the video, I do keep my eye on this, even if there's not many votes for it. Like in total, I should say, like 37 votes is not enough to get a real true gauge of things. But for the most part, people are pushing, saying like, hey, if you want to consume this thing, you want to enjoy it, do it solo. And so as a solo community here, you guys pushing this up on the list as you did, this is a great highlight for people out there that are looking for a game like this. This could be the ticket. The 17th position on the list belongs to Zombicide Undead or Alive from Cool Mini or Not. Zombicide has a soft spot in my heart because when I first started solo gaming, it was Mage Knight, Lord of the Rings LCG, and the original Zombicide that pulled me into solo gaming so heavy. And this one here, I actually had my pledge show up to a completely different address in the wrong province, which wasn't correct, and I had to get it rerouted back to me. So I didn't really get this till close to the end of the year. A lot of people already had it. This is a really, really cool game. And I haven't played this one, but I played all the other Zombicides. I own all of them, and I've also sold a couple of them. I actually ended up selling Black Plague, and that's the one that this one apparently is closest to in terms of its feel or vibe. So it kind of makes me happy because even though I got rid of Black Plague, I now have something that kind of fills that void, I guess, in terms of how it plays and the feel of the zombies trying to overwhelm you in numbers and the abominations and everything. And there's also a lot of really cool abominations in this one. Just so you know, in terms of the pictures you're about to see here, these plastic things do not exist in that box whatsoever. Everything's 2D and it's flat. This person has gone ahead. Looks like they've printed paper or something. I don't know what's going on in here. This is a very interesting. We need to get some pictures on Board Game Geek of the game without this, because even though this is cool, it is not a representation of what that game looks like on the table. It looks more like this. So here's somebody who's actually painted it up and stuff like that. It looks really cool. But long story short, if you're looking for Zombicides, there's no limit to how many different options you have. And it seems like most of them, in terms of the modern ones, end up being in the great category or above. It's an average game in terms of complexity of rules. The more abominations you add in, the more a little bit of rules checking happens there just to make sure you're playing them right. But if you want something that's like thematic and kind of going to pull you into a scenario that you kind of like you're problem solving your way through some objectives you need to achieve in order to win something, with a ton of dice rolling and a lot of swinginess, this is going to absolutely be up your alley, and it's going to be fun whether you're playing it solo or with other people. So a solid choice in the list, and I actually expected this to be in the top 20 because Zombicide is still popular to this day, and we've got the Marvel Zombicide coming around the corner in the near future, which I'm sure is going to be extremely high up the charts. In the 16th position on the list, we have Bard Song. This comes from Steamforged Games, and this one is rated 7.7. It is easy for this one to be overlooked, I believe, and I think it probably already has been overlooked. It came out in 2022, but I think it kind of slipped through the cracks, and a lot of people mentioned its existence and maybe covered it loosely, but I don't believe it got tons of attention, and I think that's kind of unfortunate because I believe this one is one of the standouts from Steamforged Games, and I also want to say, first off, that they did a brilliant move by picking up Euthea. That was an incredible pickup on their end. Euthea is an incredible game. So Bard Song, Euthea, there is the constant progression of Resident Evil getting better and better with every iteration. We had Resident Evil 2 come out, and it was kind of like there was some issues around it just in terms of its like production and the darkness of the tiles and a few things. But the third one kind of put a campaign system around Resident Evil and bumped it up. But the Resident Evil number 1, which is coming up in the near future, is really looking pretty nice. And I'm pretty excited for that, seeing as that's the first entry into Resident Evil, and I'm a huge fan. But getting back to Bardsong, and again, this is just talking general about the catalog of games from Steamforge. This is one that is very unique. I mean, you're doing things in this kind of campaign game that's different than others. As you can see here from the description, you are literally beginning with a single tile and a destination. You've got dungeons to go through, enemies to go through, but you're also doing this with the inspiration of songs. So it's a very different vibe than other games, just in terms of the theme and the feel of the game as you go through it. And I definitely recommend, if you're looking for something that's just a little bit different than what you'd expect from a fantasy adventure game, this is going to be something you should at least check out. We've now made it to the 15th position on the list for the Rolling Solo Top 20 Solo Games from 2022, voted by the Rolling Solo Game community. And we have Darkest Dungeon in the 15th position, as you can clearly see here. This comes from Mythic Games, and this is rated 6.6. It's actually weighted on the heavier side of things, which I do agree with. There's actually a couple aspects around it that kind of make it, lean a little bit towards the heavier side. But I will tell you from experience, this game is 100% an 8+ game on the review scale. It is not a 6.6. I've played games that deserve a 6.6, and this is not it. Now, what I will say for people that don't understand what's going on there, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details, but at a high level, there was asks around additional costs for shipping during the COVID window or time frame, and of course the ripple effects from that. There were Kickstarter updates or non-Kickstarter updates, and sometimes some conflicting information around when things were shipping and all that kind of stuff. So long story short, this game is delivering, and they are going to deliver the game. There has been frustration around maybe how long it's taken to deliver and maybe how in which they're doing it, and also the ask for additional funds around the shipping and things of that nature. So the logistics side of the game, nothing to do with the designer, the artist, the actual gameplay. When you talk about a review score, you're reviewing the game itself. You're not reviewing all the logistics around the game and how it's going to actually end up in on your doorstep. Those things can be valid. You can be upset about certain aspects of that 100%. But what you shouldn't do as an adult is go to a review site and then bomb it because you are so angry at some logistics that you think you can torch the designer and artist, making it seem like the game that they put their time into is not good. And that's the kind of childish crap that we have to deal with in the industry to this day. Instead of people just being adults and actually just going, hey, these things I'm not happy with, which are completely valid to not be happy with certain things around logistics or delivery or asking for additional money, whatever it is, whatever your reasons are, they're fine. But there's no reason to go to a review site and bomb that person's work that has nothing to do with it. So what they've done is they've skewed the reviews, and at this point now when the game is actually delivering, this score you will see continue to tick up and up and up and up, because on average most people are going to rate this thing between an 8 and a 10. And that's going to bring the review average back up. So we just have to basically get through the mud of the people that trashed it off the beginning in order for this review score to be accurate. So I'm saying all of this to say, if you're coming into this, looking at this game going, well, I might skip it because there's not a good review score, don't do that. This game, from my experience playing the actual game, I enjoyed this thoroughly. If you are a fan of Darkest Dungeon, you should definitely check this thing out. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and I think they did a really good job, the designer did, of actually nailing the digital implementation of the game and bringing it to the tabletop. This is one that I will not be selling. I will not be letting go to my collection because I've played this multiple times and I've had a blast every single time I've played it. So I say all that to say, I really hope this kind of stuff doesn't happen in the future, but I know it will because the opportunity is always there for people to do it, which is really, really unfortunate. All right, we're heading to the 14th game on the list, which is called Planet Unknown. And because the title is called Planet Unknown, maybe it makes sense that I don't know what this game is. I have never heard of it. I've never played it. I don't know what this is. But thank you guys for letting me know about it, because it's rated pretty good here. So it intrigues me for sure. I'm wondering whether it's as good for solo play as people are saying. But I mean, there are a decent chunk of votes there. So I'm intrigued. And if you take a look at the game itself, it looks pretty cool. It has a really interesting storage system, which looks quite nice, and I'm guessing that that's part of a Kickstarter campaign, maybe a deluxe version of the game or something like that. So that's the outer edge of the box. Yeah, it looks nice. It looks good. I might have to check this one out. I don't know how this one flew past my radar. Oh, there you go. Deluxe edition. So yeah, maybe that definitely came from a crowdfunding campaign. So thank you guys for letting me know about this one. This is the first time I've laid eyes on this. I did not know anything about it. I think I might have heard the name, and it's actually done pretty well. Wow, it's up to the 280 mark on strategy and 555 for overall. That's impressive. Okay, well, if you're wondering what this is all about, you're not going to want to talk to me because I don't know. I've never heard it, but you can certainly read the screen here in order to find a little bit more about it. But I'm going to dig in further later on and see what Planet Unknown is all about. We now move to the 13th position, and this is one which I know was on my list last year. Of course, this is the community's list, but on my actual top 20 solo games from last year, I know Marvel United was on the list. I think it might have been in the 20th or 19th position. It was pretty close to the end, but in this list, a little bit further up, and X-Men being enjoyed by a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people that love this Marvel United series of games. Again, on the lighter side of the equation, which means it can get to the tabletop more often. Of course, with all of the different options that you have across the different characters and villains you can go up against, I mean, there's a lot of replayability there, so I can completely understand it. Plus, you've got the small footprint, as I mentioned in prior solo games as well, which is a huge plus. You can also pick this thing up retail. I have it. I have everything from the base game to all of the additional content that came from the crowdfunding campaign. So there's a lot. There is a lot of boxes, especially between the original Marvel United and all of that campaign plus the X-Men one. If you have it all like I do, it is a ton of stuff, but lots to mix and match there. And also the playmat for it's really nice too. Very cool. I think the X-Men one was a double-sided playmat, so you can do either one by flipping it over. It's a fun one. It's a good one. So good call on this being in the 13th position. Let's move on to the next. We're getting closer and closer to the top 10. At this point, we're in the 12th position. It belongs to Endless Winter. This comes from Fantasia Games. This is a really good one. If you are into Euro games, 100% dive into this. It's going to have you combining worker placement and deck building together, which is really cool and blended nicely. It also just looks awesome. The artwork comes from an artist that most of us know very, very well, and that helps us get pulled into the theme of this one. Is one of the reasons why I backed it when it was up for crowdfunding campaign. If you're not into Euro games, then I would still say you should check this out because it might be one of those games that draws you into Euro games when you weren't into them in the first place. So this is a great one to kind of jump into. And I don't believe the overall weight of this one is on the high end either. It's just a little bit over average, but it's one that certainly will keep you playing. I have this. I have everything for it that was released from the campaign. I wanted to get this thing to the channel. I just didn't get it done inside of 2022. You can see for strategy and for overall, it is climbing and continuing to climb up the ranks. I could see this, as you can see right here in the hotness, this is going to keep going up. So this is one you're not going to want to look away from. Expect this one to show up in lists all over the place. In the 11th position on the list, we have Frostpunk, the board game. This is going to be, in my opinion, and probably most other people's, going to be a very tough experience for a lot of people because it's survival based. So think of This War of Mine as a very comparable game to this one in terms of it being a struggle to get to a victory. But then when you get that victory, it is ridiculously satisfying. I covered this thing in its preview form. I'm planning on covering it again in its final form in the very near future. This one is a very, very nice production on the tabletop. It has the gigantic generator in the middle. You got cubes going into it. It's extremely cool. This one, I think, is going to be talked about for a long, long time. Very similar to how this War of Mine came out and made ripple effects. I think this one is going to have legs for the long term. So if you missed out on the original one, I could see this one coming back again in another campaign. I could also see more things being added to this one, and I cannot wait to show you guys more about the gameplay. But as you can see, it is a table hog. Like, it does take up quite a bit of table space, but it looks like this is probably about a 4x3 table. You can get everything in there, but if you have anything smaller, you're probably going to need some side tables in order to kind of keep things under control. But I can tell you, like, when you set this up on the table and people walk by, they're going to notice.
Hello, my name is Serenity Robin Smith. Welcome to Rolling Solo. This is Daddy, and there's only 10 more games to go, and
That's true.
Putting like a thing inside the best games ever in a whole city.
In the whole city?
Yeah. And the best games are I think, rolling solo games.
Oh, my games.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start making some games. That's the only way they'll end up on this
my
list.
game is like kindergarten games, and it's called
Like your favorite game for the year?
no, like
Is it the Everdell one?
yeah, Everdell. And we love to like play that like with Noah, my grandma,
That's true.
Nan and Papa,
It's the My Little Everdell one, right?
and my silly daddy.
Oh, silly daddy. Yes, of course. Because you need a silly daddy in order to teach you.
I
Yep.
mean my regular daddy.
Oh,
I mean
okay.
the shark.
Well, that's good because I think they
they
probably wanted to know what games that you were like you liked the most this year too. So now they know that My Little Everdell was the best one that you liked.
And I like my unicorn game that stacks up unicorns.
Oh yeah.
And you try not to like.
I don't remember which one that's. I remember it, but I don't know what it's called.
It's called stacking games.
That works.
And it's
We'll go with
called
that.
like I think it's called unicorn stacking love games. I think. And we're
Oh, Siri is trying to jump in on this too.
Siri's trying to jump on this too.
Yeah,
so
Siri was listening to us.
Siri was listening.
I have
to
it
us.
turned off. I have Siri turned off, but somehow she just turns on every once in a while.
And
It was creeping in the background.
she's always creeping.
Yeah.
She scares me all the time, but not today.
What kind of components do you like in a game? Like, what kind of pieces do you like in a game? Like, what are your favorite board game pieces? Like, you know how when you open up a board game, there's all kinds of little pieces inside? Is there certain ones you like the most?
There's in the Everdell game,
Mm-hmm.
I like to be the first one to see in the sun. And then the see in the sun means you're the first character, and I call it the see in the sun because it looks
you're
like
talking
a
about
sun.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're talking about the sun token, which is like the
Yeah,
first
the
player
sun-
marker.
The sun.
It tells you who goes first.
Okay, it's a marker.
So is there anything else you want to say before you go?
Yes.
I wanted to pop you in here because you know the last time that the last time you were on a video, in any video, you were really small. I think you rolled dice for me in Arkham Horror or something. I think you were rolling dice in the middle of a game and everybody said they loved it. So we're gonna have to get you in on more games in the future. Like we'll have you come in and do some dice.
We love you guys, so come to our house whenever you want. And if you
That could be a problem if there's a lot of people showing up in our house.
well, if we can only invite like 2 people in our house because there's only 2 chairs left. Right, Daddy?
Sure.
To eat lunch if they're staying.
That sounds good. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll just leave the door unlocked.
And if there's like 1,000 people, we can't fit them in our house. They'll be like everywhere, and I can't go to sleep because
We might have to
they're
put
in my
like
room,
that would be
they're
a
in
problem.
your room,
That's
they're
true.
down in the basement, they're
They'll be in the
everywhere.
closet. Yeah, they'd just be all over the place.
And your whole office, they'll be running around everywhere. And that will be
So we could just
silly.
open up a hotel then, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ignore Daddy.
Ignore me. Okay, well, yikes.
Well, because Daddy sings silly things, and
That's true.
he
I
always
do.
says silly things.
Yes,
he
I
says
do.
like
I
blah,
think
blah, 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 blah,
that's
blah, blah.
actually that's an accurate representation of how
And
I
you say-
sound when I'm talking on camera. Like when I'm doing any of my
And-
videos, that's pretty much all you hear. Okay, well, it was nice seeing you. Say goodbye to everybody. Everyone's probably wondering where you're going. They're up there. That light on the top. That's the camera.
Bye, everybody.
I probably should have told you at the beginning. You've probably been staring off at the wall for the last 20 minutes.
Love you guys. Have a good weekend. And have a good weekend.
I thought it'd be fun.
I mean, have a good,
Weekend's fine. Or
No,
you
no.
can say Happy New Year's because New Year's is coming up.
Happy New Year and welcome to your parents at your house. Love each other. Have your family come over to your house or make a science project. If you want to say silly stuff in the video, just recom on our daycares or recom means
What is
like
recom?
recom means that you go back to your daycares.
Okay.
Recom your daycares and
Learn something new every day.
and learn something every day from Mr. Filiatro. And Serenity, Emmett, Adam, and Kristen.
High five. Good job. All right, you can go get your stuff.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Come on, Daddy.
I can't come. I gotta continue to talk. If I stop here, the people are gonna get mad at me. Okay, so now you guys have seen Serenity, and it's actually been kind of cool because I'd like to actually pull her in on some future videos down the road, because I used to actually have her pop in, as I mentioned, throwing some dice and doing some random things like that, and people really enjoyed that. So I think I might drag her into a couple more videos going into 2023. It's, again, just a fun balance of when she goes to bed versus when I film, and usually those are two opposite time frames. But anyway, going into the top 10 is what we're doing right now. That's why you're here, is to find out what are the top 10 games from 2022 based on all of your voting. And in the 10th position, Hexplore, it squeaked right in there, and well deserved, because I can tell you right now, from all the entries of Hexplore across the years, the domain of Mirza Noctis is by far the best. It is my favorite of all of them that have released to date. And I also recently saw, I believe it's on GameFound, that they're releasing a campaign book for this too in the future, to add like a campaign experience to all of everything that's been released to date, which is insane because there's a ton of content. So if you're a fan of RPGs in a box, or you like RPGs and want something in a board game or tabletop kind of format, this game is absolutely awesome. And it definitely started out, I want to say that when the first one came out, I was kind of like, well, this looks pretty cool and has potential and everything else. And it was just really fun to be a part of that original prototype and campaign. And then as the campaigns continued to go and the game continued to grow, it just got better and better and better. It's almost like the game has just been being refined like a diamond over time, and it is now definitely a gem. It is a staple in the solo community and has a lot of legs. So if you're looking for an RPG and a board game experience, there's not really many that compare to Hexplore and what it offers. In the 9th position, we have Return to Dark Tower. This comes from Restoration Games, and this one, and talk about table presence, this thing is off the charts. I mean, it has a gigantic tower that sits in the middle of the table, typically like this, with a playmat or a board around it. The components, if you have the deluxe version of it, are top-notch. It's a beautiful presentation on the tabletop. This is one that I need to play more of. I just got this thing out of the box super late into this year. I actually went to PAX. I was running around with Greg from Solo Playthroughs, and I was kind of talking to him about this one. He's going to kind of laugh about this. But I was trying to actually play this with my uncle Rod from Watch It Played, and it just didn't end up working out. But now that I'm back home, as you can see way up there in the top corner, we got Return to Dark Tower, and that thing has been ripped open. I've gotten inside of it. I am going to be playing this thing probably within the next week or so multiple times because I want to actually get some experience around it before my list comes out. But I've heard nothing but good things. I've only heard a few people mention some gripes around it, but what I think might actually resolve some of those gripes will be the expansion, which actually came out around the same time as the original core. And of course, there's additional content coming in the future. So I think a lot of those things are being resolved. And of course, even the actual tower itself and the app has updates that have been given to it since its original release. And I just think it's a really thematic game experience. And it looks so good. So if you don't know anything about this one, this is a game, and I might butcher this, but I believe it was released in, I think, the 80s, originally. And so they basically took it and they revamped it for today, which just kind of pulled it from decades ago and made it just so much cooler, and the tower is so much more interesting than it used to be. But this is one you definitely need to check out if you're into thematic games, adventure games. Like, it just has a presence about it that is like nothing else out there. We're now at the 8th spot on the list, and that belongs to Burn Cycle from Chip Theory Games, and this is one I did cover on the channel. This is going to have you ripping through floors and accomplishing objectives. You're going to be using robots, AI. You're going to be breaking into networks. You're going to be there's so much going on in this one. It's insanity. If you actually go back to the weight on this one, it does teeter towards the more extreme end of complexity. But I will say this: I do have videos on the channel to help you dip into the tutorial quicker. I also have an unboxing of the game when it originally arrived, and there's other videos that are being pumped out as well that cover this one. So if you're looking to try to get your feet wet in Burn Cycle, this could be right up your alley if you're looking for something that has this kind of a theme to it. And of course, Chip Theory Games goes to the next level every single time that they pump out a game. There's tons of neoprene in this, tons of chips as you'd expect, and it is a standalone game in that it was the first iteration of its kind. So it's not based off anything else that they have going in their collection currently, so very unique to everything else they already have out there. This was kind of their unique entry for 2022, and it certainly is one worth checking out. Definitely recommend it. It's in my collection, and it is staying there. In the number 7 position on the list is Frosthaven. This comes from Cephalofair Games and absolutely deserves to be in the top 10. This is a huge undertaking for them. Now, currently, in terms of where it's ranked and its average review score, it's a little bit less than Gloomhaven currently. That'll probably change as time goes on. It's still kind of ripping up the charts inside of the hotness list. I believe it's a little bit lower than this. Oh, no, there's right there. It's actually trending upwards, as you can see. And again, this is a great game to play solo because of its size to get to the tabletop and just to be able to handle the sheer amount of components inside of it and the campaign size, which if you guys remember from Gloomhaven, there was somewhere around 90 something scenarios, which is a ton of content to consume. The Frosthaven box alone, when I took a picture of it when it showed up, it was literally another third or another half bigger in size than the original Gloomhaven box, which is nuts to even think about in terms of how much is jammed in there. Some of this stuff is not inside of the box, like this kind of miniature setup and stuff like that. But if I go to another set of pictures, which would likely show the game a little bit better, you can see all the components. Now, one thing I will advise you of is when you pick this thing up and you actually open it up, it's going to take you some time to actually organize and break everything out. So that's probably the only con of this one, is being that it's such a large game with so many components. It's going to take some time to kind of get through it and organize it and get it to a place where it's a little bit easier to get to the table, but because of its size and what it's trying to accomplish, there's a lot. The one thing I will mention is they've learned a lot from Jaws the Lion, so there's a lot of of that implemented inside of this. They've also really thoroughly flushed out the in-between game. So in-between scenarios, there's a lot more to do than there was in Gloomhaven, the original Gloomhaven, which is quite nice because the original Gloomhaven was pretty much, it was road events, city events, and then right back into another scenario with some minor things in between in terms of upgrading cards or maybe donating to the church and some other aspects like that. They were pretty easy and quick to do, whereas in this one, there's quite a bit of stuff going on in that in-between zone for Frosthaven, which is good because if you're getting into a big-time campaign game, you kind of want, another whole mini game essentially inside of what to do between scenarios. It kind of makes each scenario that you accomplish and whatever you gather out of it feel that much more impactful on the game world when there's more to do in between. So anyway, Frosthaven's a huge one. It's definitely worth being on the list here. Back in the day, bang for buck, Gloomhaven was by far the best you could possibly get. In today's world, because of just the way prices have increased over time, Frosthaven is still a crazy value for how much content is inside that box. It may not be as great as it was with Gloomhaven, but it's still, for the amount of content in that and how many hours it will take you to get through it, it is crazy. It is utterly crazy. And I still to this day, it boggles my mind that he was able to accomplish getting 2 of these things out the door is nuts. But I'm always a big time fan of Gloomhaven, or I should say Frosthaven and Gloomhaven, because I covered the original Gloomhaven, and I think I did over 140 videos when the channel first started, so I have a soft spot for this one as well, and it certainly deserves the praise. We're now at position number 6 on the list. This is Aeon Trespass Odyssey, and as you can see, thematically, this thing is ripping up the charts. The review scores coming in are really, really high. So this is high praise from a large majority of the community based on the size of this thing. I will tell you this, it arrived for me in this white box that is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It is kind of, in terms of its look and feel, it's going to give you a Kingdom Death Monster vibe, but again, very different in what it's trying to accomplish and how it plays. You can read about it on the Board Game Geek page to get all, but I mean, it does for sure invoke the feeling of Kingdom Death Monster in terms of how it's packaged, presented with its miniatures and even the game box, the board itself, but it has its complete own mechanics and in the way in which it actually plays being very different. But you still have, these big epic monsters you got to go up against and take down and stuff like that. But this is one I was really excited about, still am. It actually is sitting right down there because it came in, and again, in Canada right now, it's freezing cold. So when it actually landed in Canada, that packaging was completely full of condensation because of the crazy temperature changes and stuff. So I'm just kind of letting it dry out. This is another one on top of the Zombicide one I mentioned earlier that I'm going to be opening up and digging into in the next week or so to get a good understanding of how this thing plays and operates, so I can actually talk about it in my list for the end of the year. Again, this is a tough one because it's such a beast of a game to show up at the tail end of this year, so it deserves to be on this list for this year. And again, in this video, well deserved because there's a bunch of people already playing it, but for me, for instance, it showed up kind of late, so it's like kind of tough to put this on my list, but I'm going to do my best to get it played and find out more about it so I can actually make an informed decision on where I think it sits on my list. But again, these are all opinion-based lists anyway, so you take it all with a grain of salt. But I'm going to say, based on its hotness trending, which it's still there and still trending, the great review scores and the votes from the community to get it onto this list, it is absolutely worth digging into this one, checking it out in the future if it comes back for a reprint, or potentially, trying to track it down if somebody wants to let it go because they don't have time for such a beast of a campaign game. But overall, looks incredible. There's lots of pictures on Board Game Geek to check out if you want to see this thing and what it looks like, and the monsters look absolutely nuts. We're now entering top 5 territory, and in the 5th position, a game which I covered on the channel not only in its Kickstarter campaign, but also when it arrived, is Massive Darkness 2. And honestly, this thing deserves a lot of praise. It took Massive Darkness, which it was originally based on, and did not really hit the mark. I mean, it was good. It was one of those games where, like, you get it, you play it, and you're kind of like, oh, this is good, but like it just felt kind of, the best way to say it is soulless. It didn't have, it was missing kind of the core of its own existence. I don't even know how to put that in the right terminology, but you'd play it and it just felt kind of empty. And what Massive Darkness 2 basically did is take that system, add to the system, make it better, make it a little more complex in terms of the uniqueness of the different characters and the heroes, which is something that I showed you during my showcase. And this really helped to flush out what this game can actually do, which is a lot, because this is a campaign-based game where you can actually see quite a bit of action quite quickly. And inside of here, I'm just trying to find some actual pictures here that are half decent beyond just painting and stuff like that. But you can see the game board here. You can see the different aspects of the miniatures. They're crazy, as Cool Mini or Not typically is. Some of this stuff looks like it's been added in third party, but the boards, the different enemies, and the mix mashing between different Zombicide editions to bring in even more monsters than what was originally available in the original Massive Darkness. And then on top of it, also to allow you the ability to literally upgrade your original Massive Darkness to be able to be used inside of the Massive Darkness 2 system was a brilliant move on their part, because they didn't leave that original game stranded to be essentially a waste. So it allows people to keep their campaign content and all their boxes of things from that original campaign, and then just essentially use it within MD2, which is awesome. So I was appreciative of that because I had the original campaign and then I picked up the second one. So basically I can merge it all together, plus the Zombicide connections, and just have a ridiculous amount of content to consume. But this one is worth talking about. And there will be some people that will turn around and say, no, like Massive Darkness, it had its time. It didn't do very well. But thematically, this game is ranked really high. It's at the perfect weight. It's not too easy. It's not too hard. It's just got enough there that it's like you get to the fun of the game quite quickly. But you are going to be a light bringer going into the darkness, and you're going to be trying to seal up portals that are opening up where all kinds of enemies are spewing in. There's campaigns within the game, whether it's heaven and hell kind of based, or it's just digging into the depths of the dungeon. But there's a lot to like about this, and I see this one being played into solo capacity for a long, long time. In the 4th position on the list, we have Nemesis Lockdown. This is one that landed at the tail end of last year, beginning of this year. So for some people, it actually landed in 2021 at the very end of it. Some people got it at the beginning of 2022. I was one of those people that got it at the beginning of 2022. I actually covered it during this year. Enjoyed it a lot. Even covered it in its preview form before. I love the fact that it added in like the element of power, and the fact that certain areas of or certain levels of the Mars facility would be, have no power. which would mean things are a little worse for you. You could potentially have the elevator not being able to be moved. You'd have to work to try to get to the generator room in those different rooms to be able to reactivate the power and then manipulate where it was. There was a number of different aspects that they changed in Lockdown or even added into the Fray to just kind of make it a even more unique situation than what was in the original Nemesis with just the ship layout. But whether you like being in the ship for the original Nemesis or on the Mars facility with Lockdown, you've got a lot to like between the two different options there. Thematically, it's off the charts. You're going to feel the vibe of Alien while you're playing it. Of course, you're going to have multiple different types of aliens to go up against. And in terms of the way the game actually looks and presents itself, it is beautiful on the tabletop. I mean, there's tons of pictures in here around the artwork. The different miniatures within the game look incredible. I actually got mine to be shaded out of the box, but a lot of people put a lot of time into painting these things. There's great storage, and its table presence is really nice. Has really good quality tokens. Everything looks premium. The contamination cards with the red scanner is pretty awesome, not knowing whether or not you're contaminated based on a larva being in your space. Like, there's just so many cool things. And I've taught this to a number of people. I've also played this thing solo, like, more times than I can count. And in any player count situation, it is a fun game. So I really hope they actually add another Nemesis in the future with a completely different jumble of mechanics, because I think what they've done with this can really open up into a series of games very similar to what they do with Zombicide. It's maybe just not thematically changing the theme, but they could re-implement this thing in a number of different ways and really just continue to add to it. It's great. I absolutely love it. My friends, we've now made it to top 3 territory from this top 20 solo games from 2022 by the Rolling Solo Board Game community. And you guys put Hoplomachus Victorum in the 3rd position, which is very fair. And as you can see straight away here, the best way to play is one player. And that's the reason why I'm a huge fan of Hoplomachus in general, is because solo play with this game is so much fun. And I can talk with this from history. So when I was saying earlier that I had Lord of the Rings, the LCG, Mage Knight, and Zombicide pull me into the solo game hobby, very shortly after that I found Hoplomachus. And Hoplomachus had many iterations around that time frame, and I had them all. Origins came out as well. I believe it was called Origins, and that one allowed me to play through Trials in a solo fashion, which I really loved, and that really hooked me into Hoplomachus, and I just adored the thing. And that was the groundwork for me actually backing Too Many Bones at an all-in pledge level and feeling safe about that investment, was because I had played Hoplomachus, seen what was capable, and what they were promising with Too Many Bones sounded like a launch pad into that one. So I was very, confident that the Too Many Bones system was going to be very, very good, which it is. As many of us know, it's a very popular solo game, and I've been touting that one since the very, very beginning. But Hoplomachus, came back around, and it's just cool that they took something that, was already loved in the solo community. They not only remastered the original content, but now they have Victorum here as well, which is going to add even more into the fray. It's going to add just a completely different spin on things, and I cannot wait for this thing to show up on my doorstep. It has not arrived for me yet, but I completely see why it's justified that you guys have this on your list, because a lot of you probably have it and are enjoying it. But mine will show up in the near future, and when it does, I'll be digging in further. But it just has a beautiful table presence overall. From the pictures that I've seen, and even from the stuff I've experienced in the past, I love it. So I know I'm going to be a fan of this before it even lands on my doorstep. It's one of those situations where you've played a previous edition of it, you just know what's coming is going to be great. So I cannot wait. I see this thing on the strategy side of things absolutely shooting up over time. As people get this in their hands, this review score is going to continue to go up. I wouldn't be surprised if it approaches 9, and the strategy is going to certainly get into the top 500 over time, 100%. It's a great game. It's going to be one that sticks around for the solo community for quite a while. Final 2 games, we have Oathsworn Into the Deepwood, one which I've recently covered on the channel in a Chapter 1 game overview gameplay video, so if you definitely want to check this out. This comes from Shadowborn Games. What an absolutely incredible year for Oathsworn with its reprint, having a massive success. This is one of those games that is, in my opinion, has the same kind of shockwave value, I think, that Gloomhaven did when it first landed. It's not probably being as widely talked about as it probably should be. It's certainly being mentioned in almost all lists for this year. But the praise for this thing should be basically resounding off the mountains, because what was accomplished in this game and the quality of it and the gameplay of it and the lack of the need for many revisions, like it came out of the gates almost perfection. I don't think there's too much about it that really needs to be tweaked to make it great. Like, I mean, there is a reprint. There will be things that can be tweaked or will be tweaked. And there's going to be additional content coming and all that kind of stuff in the future, I'm sure, for this one. And the second print of it was like well beyond successful, as I knew it would be. And it was a blast to be a part of that, seeing it from the very beginning, when it was a prototype, when it was first originally launched on crowdfunding, and then seeing it done in a reprint here. It's just really cool to be kind of part of the journey and seeing this thing kind of come to fruition and be loved by so many people in the solo gaming community. But this thing is just incredible. Like, if you're looking for a game that not only encompasses the narrative and story portion of a game, but then also doesn't keep you completely locked into that, you can skip past it in a way that's really efficient and streamlined. So if you're like, okay, tonight we don't really feel like going through all the story portions, we want to just get to the encounter, that's the coolest portion where you're fighting the big boss and going up against that, there's a way to jump right past the story portion, but still record it in a way that actually has impactful meaning for your campaign. And it's just, they thought of everything with this one in terms of the push to fit design of the miniatures, just the way in which the card, like the cooldown mechanics on the player boards, like around in terms of using different abilities and strategically having to think about when do I use it, when do I get it back. It's so good. I could literally gush on this thing for probably 2 hours. You guys would get sick. But I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're a solo gamer and you're looking for a fantasy campaign game, this is by far, in my opinion, the best fantasy-based campaign game for 2022, and it's not even close. My friends, we have arrived at the very top spot of the top 20 solo games from 2022 by the Rolling Solo Board Game community, voted by you guys in the Facebook group. It is ISS Vanguard from Awakened Realms. That is correct. This one being on the heavier side of the equation in terms of its weight, and I will say this, you will get lost in this one. If you are interested in space in general as a theme for board games, this is a brain dead decision to go after this one. This is special, and it will be, I would be very surprised if Awakened Realms doesn't put out another iteration of this in some form or fashion in the future, very similar to what they did with Nemesis, where they came out with Lockdown. This thing has legs, and there's lots to do with this one. There's lots to explore with this one, and as a solo gamer, once you start playing this one, it's really hard to detach from the experience, and that's a good thing. Once you start going, the game, introduces you to the exploration phase, the ship phase, kind of gets your feet wet in those elements, and you start to, everything really clicks after that very first run through of a planet, and you start to get the gist of how things move and operate, how the dice play works, which is extremely unique and very cool. But as you get going, it's like, I don't know, they design it in a way that's just so accessible. It's something where most people can come into it, look at it, and go, wow, that looks kind of complex. But once they see it played through each phase once, it's like you're off to the races. You can't stop, and you won't put it down. And if you do put it down, you're going to be biting to get it back to your table. Maybe not biting, but chomping at the bit to get it back to the table. And it's stored beautifully. It looks gorgeous. The production value is off the charts, as I mentioned multiple times. The miniatures look awesome. And the gameplay and the exploration of it just sucks you right in. So if you're looking for a space game in a campaign setting where you're controlling your ship, your crew, and everything about it, like ISS Vanguard 100% is what you want. If you're looking for a fantasy-based campaign game, then Oathsworn takes the cake this year, with Frosthaven being right there with it. Of course, those two games both coming out in the same year gives you two gigantic games to look at on the fantasy side, but I think from the sci-fi space side of the equation, there's no contest here. ISS Vanguard is by far the best one. And in terms of whether Oathsworn or ISS Vanguard is the best game of the year, Well, that is an interesting question, and you guys are going to have to wait until my video comes out in the new year going over the top 20 games that I believe are the best from 2022, and I'll let you know. I know that these two are going to be up there. I don't know if they will be in the 1 and 2 position. They might be in the top 5, who knows, but I will certainly let you know my opinion, and of course you can take that with a grain of salt, just like you did with this list as well. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Now, again, I do want to apologize for the fact that I had to go through pictures throughout this rather than actual video, because I do have a lot of videos on the channel. So if you want to see any of these games in action, please check out the videos on the channel. Do a quick search inside the channel. You'll find them in seconds if I have them. And that will certainly help you make an informed decision on whether or not the game's for you. But being that this year was kind of a very big transition year for me, with me having to move from a very old computer to a new computer, which was a very nice change. My editing speeds have jumped up dramatically because of it. But it was kind of a headache to have to deal with that throughout the holiday season. It's kind of put a little bit of a damper on what I can do from the top 10, top 20, the general lists kind of thing. So next year when we come back around with lists again, or even throughout 2023, because I do them throughout the year as well, I'll be sure to go back to showing gameplay during these, because I know that that's a real big drive for a lot of people to see the game in action as I'm talking about it. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to wrap it out right here, because literally I started when there was daylight outside. Partway through this video, Serenity showed up after a nap. The sun set completely. It's pitch black. I'm tired and hungry. And I had a blast putting this together. But yeah, I do need a break. But it was so much fun. I got to thank you guys for voting in the community. To be able to put this list together wouldn't be possible unless you guys did all that voting. And if you're not part of the Facebook community, or maybe you're not part of Facebook at all, if you did consider coming into Facebook just to join the community, that would be awesome. I mean, we'd love to have you in there, even if you're just on there for just that purpose. It's a great community, very welcoming, and no drama. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love that group, because it is, I'm the only one admitting it, but there is the drama is 0.0001% of the time. It's so low, it's insane compared to most other ones out there. So thank you guys so much for watching again. I will certainly be putting my list together in the new year. It might be delayed. We'll see how things go. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, keep on rolling solo.